Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Voxeurop Live on masculinism in partnership with POS, a European collaborative network we are proud partners of. Thank you very much for joining. Misogynistic discourse, rising hatred against women in certain circles, calls for violence against them, plans for attacks and even murders. The manosphere is growing in influence in Europe, and radicalism. Violence against women is often presented in the media as mere news items, whereas it is systemic. To discuss this today, we are very happy to have with us Claudia Torrisi and Francis Dupuis-Déri. Claudia, you're an Italian freelance journalist focused on gender, social issues, and rights. You write for Internazionale, Domani, and other publications, and have contributed to documentary and postcard productions. Francis, you're a French-Canadian researcher. You teach political science and feminist studies at the Université du Québec à Montréal. You are the co-director of the Chantier sur l'anti-féminisme and of the Réseau québécois en études féministes. You are an author of several books. The latest one you published is called Killer Althusser, The Banality of Men.
We'd like to very warmly thank Voxeurop donors and shareholders for their support. It enables us to keep hosting such events and to keep translating and publishing quality journalism, thorough investigations, and great cartoons. And last but not least, it allows us to stay independent. Before we start, we have a small tradition here at Voxeurop, so please write in the chat where you are based currently. My name is Adrian Burtin. Nice to meet you. I'm a journalist for Voxeurop, and I'm based in Brussels.
Hello, I am Catherine André, editorial director and co-founder of Voxeurop. I'm based in Paris. So we'll start with a couple of definitions on this complex subject. So first of all, could you define masculinism, the incels, and the manosphere, and tell us what the incels, who are the incels? Francis, would you like to start?
Thanks very much, Voxeurop, for the invitation. I just want to say, as a starting point, that I'm a bit sick. I have a flu, so I will be maybe a bit confused. I'm sorry for that. Starting with definition of a few words. So we will start with masculinism. Masculinism is one trend or a current of global anti-feminism. Every social movement or social forces, anti-feminism has different current or trends. The same is true for feminism, for the union movement, for the ecological movement, even for the far-right movement. And the different trends have different issues as a priority. They have different tactics. Some are more reformist, some are more radicals. They can have different members. They can ally themselves in specific struggle or be even in competition against each other, depends of the issue of the topic or the context. So masculinism is one trend of global anti-feminism, which is based on the general idea that men in society are suffering, are victims of women in general and feminists in particular, and that the society is too feminized, and some of them are even talking of matriarchy. So we are not living in a patriarchy, but we are living in a matriarchy. So in this masculinist movement, you have once again different trends or current or some movements. About 20 years ago, one trend of the masculinist movement, which was well known, was the divorce fathers group with names like Father for Justice, for instance. They were really active in the UK, they were active in Germany, they were active in France, they were active in Australia, in Canada, in the United States, and they claimed that the divorce system was controlled by the women, by feminists, that the judge were against men. They were like transforming the bank machine, just good as paying their pension, their monthly pension, and it was a huge injustice for them. And they had tactics like direct action. They disturbed the House of Commons debates in London, for instance. They climbed urban structure like bridges to drop banners. That was 20 years ago. They are still there, but they are more quiet. They are less visible. but they are still lobbying, and we can see them in the parliamentary commission or talking to deputies and stuff like that. And now, obviously, since 10 years, the social media open a new space for masculinism, masculinist. I should say for feminists also, because it's a struggle. Feminists and anti-feminists are struggling, and they are struggling also on the social media. And it's good for feminists. Because of the social medias, young girls become feminists younger than their mother and their grandmother in greater number. But then you have the masculinists. And within the masculinist manosphere, donc the manosphere is the spaces within the social medias where you find the men communities. You have different communities, and one of them is the incel, the involuntary celibates, that we will talk more in details today, I guess. But you have also the men rights activist, where you have the old divorce father movement, the website Voice for Men is their main site. You have the men going their own way. You have the, how do you say that in English? Pickup artists. Thanks very much. And some of them are really well known, like Andrew Tate, for instance.
We can define the manosphere like it was a sort of archipelagos of different communities united by an exaltation of masculinity, hostility towards women, towards feminism, and a very, very strong misogyny. There were different communities, some of them were already mentioned, and probably the incels one is one of the most, I would say, violent, but also one of the most famous communities. And the word incel stands for involuntary celibates, and basically indicates a community born in the internet and made by men who are kind of locked out of the dating market, the sexual market, due to factors they believe they are beyond their control. And basically they blame women for her death. They don't hate a woman in particular, but they hate the society as a whole, which allows what they feel as a sort of sexual oppression. So, for example, they blame the sexual revolution, the fact that women are free to choose and to live their sexuality, that women are not forced to get married anymore. They hate feminism. Of course, we are talking about a community that was born on the internet, and for some time this community was relegated to the darkest corners of the web, which is not the case anymore, but I think that we will elaborate this more later. Ironically enough, the word incel and the first community was founded by a woman in the US who created a website dedicated to those who dreamed of a romantic relationship but couldn't have one, like this woman. But very soon the community degenerated, and the woman left the Alana was her name, left the community, leaving male users free to express their frustration, and soon male users started to express hate towards women and blame them. Then the situation degenerated even further, and other communities emerged. To conclude, what incels want: they talk about sexuality and relationship, but of course sex is not what they really want and aim for. They want to affirm a sort of male supremacy, and also I would say that they want validation for their suffering. But the most violent fringe also want some justice, or at least what they think is justice. And if we look back at 2014, when the university student Elliot Rodger killed 6 people before killing himself in Isla Vista and declaring himself as an incel. There was a manifesto written by Rodger and then shared online, where the attacker expressed his hate towards women, his frustration for not having sexual relationships, and he kind of justified his act as a kind of retaliation. So in fact he called the massacre a day of retribution. So you see that they seek justice for what they think that it was stolen from them. They think it's their right to have.
I think you touched a little bit about this topic. You said that let's specifically for the incel movement, that they are very violent and there is like some sense of injustice being done to them. So we talk often about hatred against women, which is the core of masculinism, the core of incel movement, but it's not the only thing. Many incels share a strong sense of fatalism, the depressed state of being, something they sometimes call the black pill. Could you please explain this concept to us?
I would add that I think that this hate comes from a sort of form of entitlement these men feel. So they perceive themselves as are entitled to sex, entitled to power, entitled to privilege. So this is the resentment they feel comes from this kind of stolen right they feel. Just to elaborate on what I was saying before. Regarding the black pill, this is part of this sort of fake sociology, fake science, call it as you want, that incel community manosphere built. So they managed to create theories and also a precise vocabulary. And black pill is linked to the concept of red pill, of course, and it is a reference from the scene of the Matrix movie where Neo have to choose between the red pill and the blue pill. The red pill would show him the reality, while the blue pill would live in a state of ignorance. So in the manosphere, if you are red-pilled, you have clear in mind what the reality of man-women relationship is, and you have clear in mind the oppression of men. And the black pill goes even further, because incels who are black-pilled believe that the success of a man is determined only by physical traits, such as the jawline, the cheekbones, the eye shape. They believe that the modern Western society is defined by a kind of sexual class system, and at the top of this system there are the most handsome men, who are called Chad, and they are around the 20% of population, and the 80% of women are interested only in Chad. And at the bottom of this chart, there are incels who are, as we said, excluded from the sexual market.
Thank you, Claudia. I think it sums it up nicely. Francis, do you want to add something?
Only to say that for anti-feminists in general, and not only for anti-feminists, but for white supremacists and advocate of some kind of domination system, it's usual for anti-feminists to refer to some kind of pseudo-scientific theories. In the 19th century, we should remember that in the 19th century, it was amongst the most renowned scientific in the Académie de Paris, or in the British, the Oxford or Cambridge University or at Harvard, who develop scientific theories to explain that men are superior to women, white, of course, are superior to other races, and white men is, of course, superior to everyone. So this is not new. They will change through the time their theories, but the conclusion is always the same. So sometimes you will measure the bone of your head, the crane, the weight of your brain, or the length of your arm, or the hormones, the uterus will be the reason why women can go to higher education, because the uterus will atrophy and they will be infertile, sterile. So you always have this kind of scientific theory to explain what you want to explain, which is your supremacy, your superiority over other people. And with regard to incel, they have an incel wiki where you can find all kind of theories, as Claudia very well explained about. For them, it's mainly genetic. It's mainly the genetic which explain the situation. But in the case of the incel, it's a bit not weird, but it's a bit different, because they feel that they deserve something they don't have, and this is really a posture of male supremacy. They deserve sexual intercourse with women. I will read you right now a quotation from one of their main platform. It's from one of them. If you live in a Western country and contribute to income tax, you deserve sex because you pay for females to exist. So this is really what it is about, not paying tax, but having sex. But in their case, they believe that because of biology, which is based of what they believe to be scientific understanding of their situation, they don't have sex because they are below the hierarchy of what is sexually attractive, which are the Chad. The Chad are the most wonderful, the most attractive, the most beautiful, the most sexiest men. And basically, the Chad is to make a comparison with the popular culture. The Chad is the captain, the leader of the football team of the college university, the college team, football team. This is the model of the Chad, which apparently all women are attracted, or at least 80% of the women are attracted, and they get all the sex they want, and the 10 or 20% of the men at the bottom of the hierarchy get nothing, which of course empirically is totally false, but it's what they believe. Something that is really problematic in their discourse, or in the way they present themselves, and it was the same thing with the Fathers for Justice movement I talked at the beginning. The divorced father who claimed to be unjustly treated by the justice system, the family court, and so on, is that we always have their point of view, but we never have the point of view of the women they interact with. So we didn't have the point of view of the divorced woman, the mother of their kids, for the father for justice activist. And it's the same thing with the incels. We don't know how they interact with women. We don't have the point of view of the women. Maybe they don't interact very well. Maybe they don't approach them very well, and it's the only reason why they don't have intercourse or sex with women. But we don't know, because we don't know what the women think about them.
What links can one establish with a more general backlash against feminism? Since I don't know where we can date it from, but certainly at least a decade.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it is. I mean, it's linked with what is happening and what has happened in the past years. But on this, I want to make a point, because, of course, incels are part of a sort of ecosystem of male supremacy, which got stronger, of course, in the past years. And I mean, we see discourses of and the rhetoric of the manosphere. We saw it in the White House, basically. So this is something that we saw. The point I want to make is that the manosphere and all this widespread misogyny, despite what we already said, it is not an internet product. It is an emanation of the current patriarchal orders. It is a product of the society, and I think that this is how we should treat it, and this is how media should cover it. I don't know if this is an answer to your question, but sometimes it seems to me that we talk about this kind of widespread misogyny and this phenomenon as something that originates in the internet, and it was the case also with the US rhetoric and the alt-right rhetoric, and all it is linked with the Trump rhetoric and the bros culture. But I think the real origin of it is in the society, not in the internet.
Yes, I totally agree with Claudia. We should be careful not to think that everything is new with social media. For instance, the general argument or thesis that men can't lead the seduction process with women anymore, and that women decide with whom they are going to have a sexual relation. This is not new. Books were published about claiming such a thing 20, 30 years ago already. And for instance, in France, you have the well-known politician Éric Zemmour, which is at the far right, Today he's a politician, but before becoming a politician, he was a kind of a journalist, a commentator, public commentator, a polemist, in fact, and agitator. One of his first book was Le Premier Sexe, the first sex, which was, of course, a kind of a parody of Simone de Beauvoir's Second Sex. And the book published in 2006, so years before social media and years before the incels. At the beginning of the book, the first pages, he described a situation where he's talking with one of his young friend, a young man in a cab, and the young man is complaining that he don't know how to approach, how to seduce women. And Zemmour start his reflection about the domination of women in France. As you know, of course, French is dominated by women, of course, and homosexual, of course, and Arabs. That's the well. You don't have to read the book. I just spoil it. But so it's not new. Incel movement is new as a specific form of anti-feminism. But the claim that we don't have the sex we deserve, that's not new.
Thank you so much. So yeah, you're absolutely right. This go far beyond just the internet movement, as you rightfully pointed out, Claudia. It's tied with the patriarchal order. So you talked about Eric Zemmour, etc., but it goes back in time, right? So how far can we trace it back? This idea of a structured movement of men frustrated by women and by society in general.
My publisher will be happy if I talk about my book. I wrote a book. It's called La crise de la masculinité. So masculinity crisis. It's a critical review of this idea that the men are in crisis because of women. And this is not my own work, but what I did, of course, is that I went to search for this kind of discourse in history, reading historians' work. And what I can tell you is that you had already this kind of discourse in the Rome Republic more than 2,000 years ago. Cato l'Ancien, I don't know how you say that in Italian, but Cato l'Ancien, I don't know, Cato, anyway. Roman plebeian, not plebeian, senator or something like that, was displeased because Roman woman wanted to drive, not car, but of course, but chariot, what you have with horses. With horses and chariots, and dressed in colorful clothes, and Cato claimed that because of that, the Roman women were dominating Roman man. So that was more than 2,000 years ago, and in Europe, at least in the last 500 years, you heard at different moments in different countries in different contexts that women had too much power over men, and today it's everywhere in every countries. So you can claim as a man that you are dominated by women in the poorest country like Haiti, for instance, or the richest and most powerful country like in the United States, in every political regime, in monarchy, in socialist countries, in theocracy, in liberal regime, in any kind of economic regime, in cultural regime, even in legal regime, with the family right. Even if women don't have the right to vote, to be elected, to be in the army, to own their own bank account, to keep their own family name, they can divorce. You can hear men claiming that they are dominated by women. And what is the main claim is not only that, and maybe that's even more important. It's not only that men claim that they are dominated by women, is that at the very same time, they always claim that what we can have in our society is a masculine identity, really clear, cut from the female or feminine identity, and that we have two different gender identity, and that a man is someone who is dominant, strong, aggressive, autonomous, don't need anyone, can do whatever you want, and a woman is caring, passive,
weak,
vulnerable, weak. Thanks. I'm sorry. Weak, dependent in the private sphere. The man is in the public sphere. So this is what is about the discourse of victimization by men. It's not only claiming that men are victims, it's claiming that we need strong, clearly different gender identity, which are different. They are opposite, as we say in French, c'est les sexes opposés, opposite sexes. This is a really strange conception when you think about that, the opposite sexes.
How strong is the incel movement in Italy, or masculinism?
I would say that masculinism is pretty strong in Europe, and this is, of course, linked also with the surge of the far right, as we were mentioning before, because, of course, these two things are intertwined. And masculinism is, I mean, we also had some examples, for example, in France, of how the spreading of such ideas can turn into violence. I think in France there was a case last summer. But the point is that the phenomenon has been observed in Europe, but not fully framed at the European level. And this is the case about Italy. When you asked how masculinism or incel movements is strong in Italy, the answer is we don't know. And we don't know because we haven't any kind of tools to monitor the phenomenon. In some EU studies, Italy has emerged as one of the European countries with a significant presence of incel subculture, ranking among the top countries in Europe for online misogyny in this analysis. But again, we have not monitoring tools, and the institutions are not really looking into that phenomenon. Of course, in Italy, there are incels forums and incels communities. It's been years that these forums are active. And there are a lot of Italian users who are active in international forums or Telegram channels too. So far, there have been no crimes openly linked to the incel movement in Italy, even though some individuals have been linked to the movement after some facts. For example, in 2020, there was the murder of a couple, and the killer was then some sort of idolized in Italian forums as an incel, even though because they found a diary where he said he talked about his loneliness, but there are no proofs that he was linked with any kind of incel community. And the same happened also with another man who did a similar act more recently. What I saw in Italian forums and communities is that there are really a lot of posts and threads commenting cases of femicides, which, as you know, is a huge issue in Italy. And these posts and these users use a very violent language, justifying the murders, of course. But what is new is that they sometimes use the manosphere and incels language and words, that vocabulary we talked about previously. And this is something that is possible to observe not only in some platforms or forums or, I don't know, Reddit, which was one of the first home for incels communities, but also in other social media, notably, but not very surprisingly, on X, for example, the former Twitter. What I think that should worry us is that the spread of this content is going beyond the manosphere communities. Because I think that now the situation is different from what it was in the beginning, which was relegated to the dark corners of the web. It was something that you had to actively look for. Now the manosphere messages are spread outside the so-called, I don't know, manosphere bubble. They are basically mainstream on social media platforms. So there are scholars who prefer to use the term monoculture instead of manosphere to show how this message has gone far and outside what were, again, the dark corners of the internet. And this is something that, as I said before, has to do not only with the internet culture, but the society, of course, more broadly. Of course, the fact that this monoculture is affecting different corners of the online life means that these messages manage to reach very different kinds of people, and also very young people, and also because it resonates with offline messages in society. So for Italy, but I would say that this is a general risk. The risk today is that the normalization of this discourse facilitates radicalization and the transition from verbal to physical violence. And there is also a more insidious effect, which is the trivialization of misogyny in everyday relationships. And this is something that, for example, teachers and educators are already seeing in schools and in young kids.
As Claudia said, it's not only in private website, it's in public website. The main platform of Incel is public. You can go right now. You don't need to subscribe. You just get in. Of course, you will see a warning saying it's only for men, heterosexual men, not under 80 years old, but in fact, everybody can go. We can assume, of course, there are thousands of them on this platform, for instance. So we can't assume that they all agree with the most violent element of the incel, of course. And this is a challenge for a researcher and journalists, I guess. It's, of course, they don't tell who they are, how old they are, what are their income, if they work, if they have been at university. So this is always the question we are asked about them, who they are. Well, we can guess, but we don't know exactly. We don't have specific data about them. But with regard to mass murder, I will add that every time there is a mass murder somewhere reported by the media, in the minutes following the info on the media, you will have a new thread on this specific platform, and they will be hoping for female victims. They don't even know what is it about. Usually it has nothing to do with incels. It has nothing to do with masculinism, although mass murderers are usually men, but they don't do that only with regard to misogynistic, the male cause, or for male domination, but they are obsessed by mass murders. And we talked earlier about how was it before the incel movement even claimed for themselves the mass murder of École Polytechnique de Montréal in 1989. The 6th of December, a young man entered the Polytechnique school in Montreal and shot 14 women, 13 students, and one administrative agent, claiming that he hate feminists, that feminists destroy his life, and he wanted revenge, and he believed that there were too many women at Polytechnic school. They were not even 20% of the students, and he killed them. He has nothing to do with the incel movement. He has nothing to do, this attack has nothing to do with sexuality. It has to do with the place of women in society, with the place of women in prestigious institutions. But today, the incel claim him as one of their hero and martyr. They are obsessed by mass murders.
You talked about the fact that it's a very old movement. It comes from the patriarchal order, and it's also something that is very misunderstood by our own governments. So what should we do to fight these movements? How should our governments react?
I will repeat myself probably, but I think that first of all, governments should take the issue into consideration seriously, which is, I think, not the case for now, at least in Italy. And then again, of course, this is not something that regards internet and the online sphere only. So it is not enough to ban content. We need to give, as I said, this rhetoric is widespread. And my article for the Pulse project was about how algorithms help this kind of discourses reach young people without looking for manosphere messages or incel words. And it is really, really easy for young people to meet this kind of discourses and this kind of messages. So banning the content is not enough. We need to give people the tools to interpret what they see online. But I do think that the main point is education, and I'm talking about sexual and relationship education, which is a very debated issue in Italy these days, with a bill from the government that would impose a sort of approval by the parents for any activities in school regarding sexual and relationships education. There is a general lack of education on masculinity and gender issues. I don't think that it's possible to leave the education to platforms which are not very neutral. I would say that they are not neutral at all, and probably this is one of the internet-related issues we have to tackle when talking about misogynistic online communities and violent discourses.
If we think of the most extremist of them, the police service and even intelligence service are already looking into the manosphere and the incel network. It's written explicitly in their annual report of Europol, for instance, which is public. So I guess there is even more work done not publicly. That's for Europol, but it's true also here in Canada, where we had at least 2 or 3 incel mass murder in the last 5-7 years. I guess in the United States they are looking at these networks also, and it makes incels suspicious of people wanting to ask them questions. By the way, because they know they are under surveillance in many ways by journalists, by scholars, and by intelligent police service. With regard to socialization or education or prevention, of course, there is places where it's really hard to work for justice and equity between gender, especially if we are in a family where the father, for instance, is consider himself a patriarch, a dominant male, an alpha male, and he want to be a model for his son. Then it's difficult to fight against such a model. For the last 20, 30 years in school, at least in the so-called Western world, there have been a lot of work on tolerance, inclusion, diversity. But as I said earlier, all of this is about political struggle between different forces. So the progressive, the trans movement, the feminist movement, the movement for diversity is there, working, doing things, publishing manual or guides of good practices for school, for education, for teachers. But on the other side, as Claudia said it really clearly, you see, especially in Europe and the States, a little bit less in Canada, for now at least. Hopefully, the far right is really gaining momentum. So for a country like France, where you have 40% of the people voting for the far right parties, it's not a surprise that you have a strong masculinist movement, also or anti-feminist movement. It's going hand in hand. It's going together. I would add, maybe, I know it's not the answer you were expecting, a specific answer to what we do with it, but I would add something. I think it's important. I have been asked, and my colleague, my co-researcher, Melissa Blais, the sociologist Melissa Blais, both of us, we have been working on masculinism and anti-feminism for the last 20 years together or by ourselves, and in the last 1 or 2 years we have been we got a lot of interview requests with this specific question: what to do with our boys? And at the end of every interviews, we said to the journalists, but we must be concerned about our girls too, because the girls are those who are interacting with these boys, and especially if they are heterosexual, they will want to live with one of them at one point. I guess it's the goal or the dream of the game. If it's not a game, but you know what I mean. And we should also think about what tools we want to give to the girls to defend themselves individually or collectively in such a situation. And this is something that we often don't think about. We only think about the boys.
I agree, and I'm convinced that education is very, very important on both sides, especially for young men. But one thing that it was important to me during my journalistic work was that looking at posts from the past 2 years in international incels forums, there was a certain relevant percentage of users who arrived there from TikTok or other social media. Sometimes I have to say also from media coverage, but this is another issues. I think that while we need to work on education, nowadays in this specific historic movement, we need to also talk about platforms and how platforms can be held accountable for what the messages they allow and that they spread, because it is absolutely sure that misogyny sells, as violence sells, as hate sells, and we cannot ignore how social media platforms are engaged with this mechanism which keeps together capitalism and misogyny. We cannot forget, as we talked about far right, etc., who owns these platforms, and the fact that we are now in the so-called oligarchy era. And so we also need to tackle this issue. I mean, it's not just one answer, it's education, investigation, terrorism, but also there is the platforms and social media issue, which I think that it is not to ignore.
Parents should talk with their kids. I know it's easier to say than to it's easy to say, but kids, girls and boys, and non-binary, of course, but about what they see or what their friends see and watch and follow on the web. In the good old time when we had only one TV set in the living room with 4 channels, and it was black and white. Of course, the parents knew what the kids were watching, coming back to school, and there were often rules in the family. You cannot watch this kind of movies or this kind of TV show. And now often the parents don't know what their kids are watching. And as Claudia said, with the algorithm, it can go really, really fast that you are in a kind of in a trap. But what I want to say also is that it's not because your teenager is following Andrew Tate, for instance, for a while, that he is a Andrew Tate follower or believer. Some boys, for instance, follow Andrew Tate but make fun of him. They believe he is a fake, he is a joke. And some boys can go in the incel platform for a few weeks, a few months, and then maybe they will fall in love and they will have a partner and everything will be fine and it will be just a phase. Though we should not panic, or it's not a catastrophe if your kids is in these network for a while, but you need to have a talk with him. And probably you need to have a talk with his daughter if you have his sister if you have daughters also. And if you have daughter, you may want to talk with them to see what they have to say about the boys in their school or in their network about all this stuff.
And many thanks again to our supporters and shareholders who made this event possible. To all the others, don't forget to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. It's free, it's fast, it's easy, and follow us on social networks, and please consider donating to support our work if you can.